Probably not for this matchup, as Brad's trying to go way over the top. But I think that card has some legs, if not in this deck, then somewhere else.
Christopher Arnold might be a familiar face to you guys. He did top 8 our Season 1 Invitational last year. So no slouch is he, though he is up against a great player and the reigning Players Champion. Round number 5 here underway. You saw Nelson just start with a Forest, Arnold with a Temple of Malady. Brad will play an Elvish Mystic and pass the turn back, getting his ramping online. Brad did take a mulligan to 4, however, which is notable. We'll see if he can work his way through this, as he does have a copy of Commune with the Gods to cast. So take a look at the top handful of cards here. See if he finds something he likes. Hornet Queen among those cards. He will take a Hornet Queen. The rest will go to the graveyard. Hornet Queen, a Frontier Siege, a Commune with the Gods, and a Swamp. And he'll just have to pass the turn back. There is a copy of Doomweight Giant in Nelson's hand. Certainly something to be aware of, though Christopher doesn't know that just yet.
So I think that it's going to be hard for Brad to get to Ugin this game, though we will see. I think that's a card that has a lot of potential to change the way these mid-range matchups play out, because so often the goal is, well, just diversify your classes of permanents in play. So have some creatures and a Whip of Erebos and a Planeswalker, so there's no specific angle of attack. Ugin overpowers all that kind of stuff, and I think that it has the potential to really change the way that these kind of matchups play out.
See Courser, Crewfix come into play. It'll reveal a Kiora. Swamp will come in, so Arnold will gain a little bit of life. Nelson does have an Urborg, and now this is a Frontier Siege. And this allows him to do some real ramping. He'll choose the con side of things, which means at the beginning of each of his main phases, 2 green mana available. Very powerful.
And this really speaks to the level of preparation that Stars Games brings to the table. Week 1, and we already have the cons and dragons tabs ready to go.
Ahead of the curve.
Just incredible.
In we come for 2. What will the follow-up be here for Arnold? That'll be a copy of Sultai Charm. So the naturalize effect on that proving to be very important, but we know charms, that versatility, very important.
Listen, I don't know exactly what my opponent's doing over there with a Frontier Siege, but I know it's not in play for no reason.
That's true.
Better just get that thing out of play.
And Dark and Mystic will show up as well, so 2 cards we don't see a ton of in Standard. Quite good here for Christopher Arnold so far. Nelson going to play a Llanowar Waste, and now a copy of Doomweight Giant, which means that Dark and Mystic is going to bite the dust. Of course, the Mystic, it's a blue 1/1 Merfolk Wizard. You tap a blue and you tap it. Each player reveals a top card of his or her library. You may put the revealed cards into their owner's graveyard. If you don't, each player draws a card.
So it's some graveyard food. It's a way to get some resets with Courser. And on average, your card is more powerful than your opponent's card. The Sultai decks are capable of just locking people out of the game effectively.
Here's the thought sees to take care of the Hornet Queen that is in Nelson's hand, leaving him empty-handed. Though Doomweight Giant on the table could be problematic here for Arnold. The big 4/6 ready to get in the red zone if it does make it through the turn. This will be a copy of SCGDC. So the trigger will turn over a couple of cards. Treasure Cruise, a couple copies of Opulent Palace, no creature, that means no zombie. Top card of Arnold's deck is a copy of Temple of Malady, though he does have a Pluto Delta in play if he'd like to sacrifice that away, as Nelson does draw a card. He's got some mana, he's got a Frontier Siege. He'll name cons with that again, and that could lead to so much more moving forward.
Yeah, no, that's a really good draw for Brad. I mean, I know he has nothing in hand right now, but it means he's drawing very live.
You do a little math here, 4 lands in play, plus Elvish Mystic is 5, plus the mana from the Siege is 6 and 7. That means the top deck Hornet Queen can come directly into play.
Yeah, I mean, Brad can definitely catch up here.
But he's got some other big draws available to him as well. A card like Eidolon of Blossoms, that's a 4 in his deck, so things can really get crazy here.
Yeah, even from 4 cards, you know, Brad's got the resources now to work with where a lot of his most powerful stuff is online.
Swamp will be the draw here for Arnold. Take a look at the top card. It's a copy of Llanowar Waste. So that'll come into play. Of course, trigger the Courser, a little bit of life gain here. And now the top card is a copy of Treasure Cruise. Hero's Downfall at the ready here for Christopher. Perhaps he has some interest in clearing a path. And he does. So Doomweight Giant will bite the dust. And perhaps we will see SCGDC and Courser come into the red zone here in just a moment. Though you do see Arnold is tapping some mana. So he will go with Kiora.
And this is the awkwardness. With SCGDC in play, I don't think he wants to mill over a Treasure Cruise right now. He could just minus the Kiora and do it that way.
Yep. Take the Cruise to his hand. Take a look at the top card. It's a Courser, which is a creature for SCGDC. He'll get to play another land, which means he gets to trigger the Courser that's in play. And that looks to be a winning combination as now SCGDC is going to come into the red zone. A couple of cards will get turned over. Reaper of the Wild, SCGDC, and a Courser, which means a Zombie will come in. And we'll have to see Arnold's top card in just a moment, and it is a copy of Sylvan Caryatid.
And you can see the value of doing all this kind of fidgety stuff in these Sultai strategies. Just being able to reset the top card of your deck or to draw the top card when you have information on what it is, really, really valuable.
Nelson going to use the green mana from the Frontier Siege to put a Sylvan Caryatid in play and simply pass the turn back. Brad, normally not on the receiving end of a Sultai beatdown. He's done that to quite a few people. But he's watching in action now, and though it is a different take on how to play Sultai, the result looks to be the same, which is a winning strategy.
And Christopher's deck here is really impressive at filling up his graveyard. I mean, I know Sultai decks across the board are, but he's working with a lot more self-milling kind of stuff that I think the average build does.
You see the cards drawn from Treasure Cruise, 1 Sultai Charm, 2 copies of Sylvan Caryatid. Top card of his deck right now is a Temple of Malady, which will come into play thanks to the Courser. A little scry action here. Llanowar Waste, predictably going to go to the bottom, so now the top card is a copy of Hero's Downfall. The ability for these decks to just go through.
Yep.
Well, velocity generated quite high.
So much card advantage.
You got SCGDC turning over some cards now to place in the graveyard. Thoughtseize will be the top card of the deck, no trigger. So Caryatid will get in front of the Courser. Oddly enough, as much stuff as Arnold is doing here, one good draw step from Nelson, like a Hornet Queen, he can really turn things around.
Exactly, and I think the Sultai Charm that Christopher is looking at here may still want to go after the Frontier Siege.
There's Caryatid, pass the turn back. Nelson will draw.
I understand that it's a removal spell for a lot of Brad's potential draws here, but allowing Brad to get 2 free mana here means he has a lot more dangerous top decks.
Yeah, and this is what's kind of fun about playing in week 1, right? Where, we can see Brad's deck list, and so we know that what Brad's trying to accomplish as to our viewers at home, but Christopher doesn't actually know. So he doesn't know that, okay, so here's the deal. I need to kill that Frontier Siege. It's really what holds the deck together.
Well, he may have a sense of it because he's already seen Hornet Queen.
Sure.
And that's a pretty bad card for him to resolve right now.
Yeah, the big question, right, is does he know that this is basically a Siege Hornet Queen deck?
Yeah.
There are 4 copies of each card in the deck, and that doesn't even throw into the Ugins that are in the equation as well. Brad's holding a land, so if Brad is able to draw Ugin, he can actually just play it and then minus and blow up everything.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, as commanding as Christopher's position looks, it's not as safe as it would appear on the surface. Ugin can catch it all up.
And you see Brad, he's just kind of sitting here, arms folded. Brad, I'm bored. Not a lot I can do. Picking up information along the way.
But this is also part of the body language. Brad looks defeated, knowing that there's definitely a card in his deck that can turn this all around.
Oh, yeah.
So he's trying to just put up the posture of, yeah, I'm playing out the stretch here, but I'm dead in a turn or two, when Brad knows that's definitely not the case.
He'll draw. He's looking for Ugin, maybe Hornet Queen. He definitely has outs in this situation. He's going to play an Elvish Mystic. He'll play the Forest, maybe. Christopher already knows it, so he'll just put that into play and pass the turn back. Arnold going to draw a copy of Opulent Palace. Top card's another copy of SCGDC. And what really gets bad here for Chris is maybe if he uses Sultai Charm as just a removal spell. Who knows, as everything's going to attack. You got the attack. You got the milling. There's a Treasure Cruise on top of the deck. Zombie token coming in. Caryatid's going to block the Courser. Looks like Mystic's going to jump in front of something as well. Got to keep that life total just high enough to give yourself another chance at this Ugin. Opulent Palace going to come in. Of course, trigger the Courser. Little life gain as Nelson goes down to 3. Rattle gets to untap and draw. Did he find something that gives him another draw step?
If he's looking at 2 lands here, is likely to be Eidolon of Blossoms, which gives him a redraw. I don't know if there's anything he's drawing to, and he doesn't want to reveal the Eidolon if he doesn't have to.
Yep.
But gave it a shot there, but found nothing of help.
Well, Christopher Arnold is going to win game number 1 here over Brad Nelson. Sultai mid-range up a game over Green-Black Constellation, though it is possible that Arnold did dodge a bit of a bullet there. As, again, if Ugin comes rolling off the top, we might have a different outcome for that game.
Christopher could have shut that down with the Sultai Charm there. The fact that he didn't, to me, means that Ugin's probably not on his radar as a possibility. Because what else was really going to happen with that Sultai Charm? He had a pretty commanding edge in resources. A Kiora that could have handled a random large creature that came into play on Brad's side of the table. So I suspect that Christopher was just not thinking of it as a possibility.
Well, we mentioned Ugin, 2 copies in Nelson's main deck. He also has an additional one in his sideboard to go along with 2 copies of Garruk Apex Predator, 2 Heroes Downfalls, 3 Bioblight, 3 Nissa Worldwaker, 3 Read the Bones, and a Thoughtseize. What do we like here?
The stuff that's good at fighting the big battles. I think the Ugin and even the Garruks can come in here as well. I think Heroes Downfall is reasonable as a matchup. The Read the Bones and the Thoughtseize just become more of a control deck.
What do we see on Arnold's side?
2 copies of Bioblight, 3 copies of Drowned Sorrow, a Whip of Erebos, 2 copies of Disdainful Stroke, 3 negates, a Liliana Vest, 2 copies of Ashiok Nightmare Weaver, and 1 copy of Sultai Charm. I like the Sultai Charm a lot. I think 2 copies of Ashiok could be really good here. Typically, Ashiok pretty solid against Constellation strategies if you can back it up with some removal spells. The Disdainful Strokes, the Liliana Vest, and possibly the negates.
A lot of options here for both players.
A lot of really good options on both sides of the table.
We'll see if Nelson can keep more than 4 cards here for game number 2. But while we do wait for these players to finish up sideboarding, we will talk about the newest addition to the Star City Games creature collection. We've got a winter collection and 4 awesome creatures here available.
What a menagerie with a rat, a wolf, a mammoth, and the Turtle Witness. All available on card sleeves, playmats, dice bags. Head over to StarCityGames.com/creature collection to get your stuff today.
Now, you would think that the Eternal Witness, that's a play on Eternal Witness, a pun, if you will. You think that would be my favorite one. But no, I stay steady with the Mammoth.
The Mammoth is pretty sweet.
I'm still not quite sure what the Mammoth is holding within its stout. It's having a bit of a celebration, it seems. But nonetheless, I like it.
Anytime I've questioned what's going on in the art, it's some reference to something that I don't get. Once someone explains it to me, I feel stupid for not getting it in the first place. So I'm not going to speculate.
Okay.
But it appears that there is some sort of celebration.
It's worth celebrating. There are not many mammoths left, so
Right.
I would just celebrate being alive.
In Magic, the mammoth is definitely an endangered species. You know, War Mammoth days of being played in tournaments probably behind us.
Probably. I like the an asterisk is key. We're not sure, but it's probably done.
I don't know. Magic R&D could always go back to when the baselines of the game were Grey Ogre, Counterspell, and Terror. We could go back, and then War Mammoth could be okay, but probably not.
A more honest time.
Yeah. Maybe. I don't know.
Look, I'm not saying a mammoth block wouldn't sell. I'm saying a mammoth block would certainly sell. Let's just dial it back. Let's go back to Ice Age, just not have it be Cold Snap.
Sure.
Mammoth block.
Well,
That's all.
Ice Age we can have some nostalgia about, but by modern standards, that it was not a well-designed or developed set.
We can fix that. It's no
You could.
problem.
You could.
Jungle Hollow will start things off here for Nelson, a Temple of Mystery on Arnold's side. Looks like Brad has actually kept more than 4 cards this game, so see if his deck can actually get rolling, though he does not have any mana acceleration just yet. Arnold with a copy of Land Over Waste. There's a copy of Sylvan Caryatid, and he'll pass the turn back over to Nelson, who draws a Hornet Queen. There's Nurborg. This is a Courser. This will take a damage to cast it. Take a look at the top card. It's a Frontier Siege. We'll pass the turn back Arnold's way.
Lots of mana to work with.
Yep. The big question here is, does Nelson have a 4th land in his hand? Or is he relying on the Courser to find that? And they don't play a lot of lands. Does this take on Green-Black Constellation? I say they in regards to Brian Bronduin, Todd Anderson, and Chris Van Meter. And around the 23 mark, draw a card, Temple of Malady. It is a land, but it enters the battlefield tapped. So a little scry action here for Nelson. Of course, we'll have to see the card, which is a Swamp. Looks like he might leave that one on top, and he will. No good attacks to be had, so Nelson will just pass the turn back over to Arnold.
I'm curious how much of the counter spell action did Christopher bring in, and how much is in his hand.
There's a copy of Courser. That's in. Take a look at the top card, Sylvan Caryatid. Land going to come into play. Means, of course, we'll gain a life. Arnold's up to 21. Nelson looks like he has a removal spell in his hand that he wants to cast on the Courser, and he will. He's going to use Hero's Downfall to get that thing off the table. He'll draw a Swamp for the turn. Take a look at the top card, which is another Courser of Crewfix. We know he's got a land to play, but does he want to go with the Siege or perhaps an Eidolon?
Well, he is definitely conscious of the possibility of getting hit with counterspells here, so he's going to pace out his threats accordingly. You can see him holding out the Eidolon like, yeah, if you have Disdainful Stroke, you're obviously countering this.
And what's interesting about this is that he might be leading with the Eidolon because he feels that that is the less important card as opposed to Frontier Siege.
Well, the Frontier Siege at this stage might not be good enough to get the Disdainful Stroke out of his hand.
Sure.
Eidolon is worth some sort of response, and if Brad's trying to set the stage to get things like Ugin or Garruk or Hornet Queen into play, then that's kind of how he has to lead it. If Christopher is committed to sitting on Disdainful Stroke anyway, the Frontier Siege may not do anything because all it does is facilitate playing more expensive stuff.
Let's see, for Chris, I don't think this is the way that he wants the game to go as he deploys another copy of Sylvan Carry added. It looks like he's got a follow-up play to make here too. And a Tasigur, the Golden Fang. The reason I say that is because the longer we go, I think the more it favors Nelson. Nelson's got the bigger spells to play.
I don't know if Christopher quite knows exactly what's going on in Brad's deck, but deckless to deckless, I absolutely agree. I mean, Brad's got way more power he can bring to the table. All of Christopher's good work can get undone by Ugin entering play. And that's a new dimension to this kind of matchup that didn't exist last week.
Now, Tasigur is a mighty powerful card. We've only seen it a couple times today, and I expect we'll see it quite a bit over the next handful of weeks here.
This was my vote for most exciting standard card in the set.
Anything that has Delve on it, that'll make you think.
Good numbers, good at shoring up your early game against aggression or your mid game against aggression, and if the game happens to stall out, also quite powerful.
Frontier Siege, of course, choosing cons. Trigger with the Courser, a little scry action here from the Temple of Malady. Nelson looking at a Courser on top of his deck. We'll see where he wants to put that.
I wouldn't say, of course, choosing cons. Remember, Brad does have Hornet Queen in the deck, so there's a combo if you select dragons. Not against Christopher's current board, but
yes.
It's a thing that will come up in a percentage of games.
Yeah, the combo that you mentioned, when you do choose dragons, whenever a creature flying enters the battlefield under your control, you may have it fight target creature you don't control. So when Hornet Queen comes in, along with all those insect friends,
you do the math.
Yeah. Forest at the draw, Queen's on top of the deck. Nelson reaching for mana. Frontier Siege providing 2 green. There is Hornet Queen. Nelson wondering if this will resolve, or do you have a Disdainful Stroke? Queen is in. And that means 4 insects will join it. There is a Forest. Courser will gain a little bit of life, and it's time to pass that turn over.
I'm surprised that Christopher didn't Tasigur in response to the Hornet Queen.
Me too.
There's an opportunity to maybe find a counterspell. Things have to break pretty specifically, but
So we got a hero's downfall here. Perhaps, we'll see. We'll use that to clear out a Courser, and now he'll activate Tasigur. So Tasigur going to turn over a couple of cards here. And Brad says, you can have another Tasigur. Enjoy that.
excellent choice.
Indeed. You can actually get him in the Tasigur loop.
Loop of sorts again.
Maybe that's strong.
Yeah.
Attack with Tasigur. All right, I'll block with the Hornet Queen token.
The second Tasigur wouldn't be very good even if Tasigur wasn't legendary.
Sure.
It's really bad as a legendary.
All right, we're going to tap a bunch of mana here, 7 to be exact. Now here is a Garruk Apex Predator. So Brad's not the only one with big planeswalkers as he takes a look at his hand.
But this is part of the reason that Brad really likes Ugin in lieu of having Garruk is because Ugin trumps all.
Yeah.
Brad can still catch up even if this Garruk does a lot of damage.
And Garruk starts at 5. The elevator goes up for multiple abilities, either destroy another target planeswalker, none in play currently, or put a 3/3 black beast creature token with Death Touch onto the battlefield. Tasigur will get blocked by an insect token. We'll have to do a check here perhaps for a 3/3 beast. Ho ho ho. I expected us not to have that.
We come prepared. I mean, if we already have the Cons Dragons tabs, forget about it.
Oh well, one Garruk deserves another.
Typically, you want to be the person with the second Garruk.
True. And you want to be the person with the first Ugin.
Yeah, this is fine too.
Now, here is the Spirit Dragon. Something that Brad was trying to draw to quite a bit in the first game. Nelson gonna come into the red zone. Gonna go after the Garrick, gonna get that off of the table. And as we mentioned, Brad is the one who can do the bigger things.
Yep. Not a bad turn and not a bad follow-up in case things go wrong.
Yeah. Draw step to draw step, things get ugly. And what you'll note, in the middle stages of this game, when Brad played his Eidolon, casting as more of a question when he was holding it in the air, wanting to draw out the counterspell, which worked effectively.
No, that was all on purpose. I mean, there's a lot of body language stuff going on in these two games from Brad. It seems subtle, but it's all about trying to throw out the signs. And Brad knows that Christopher's good enough to pick up on this kind of stuff, too. So these little bluffs, these little hints with his body language, they're all on purpose.
But you can see the demeanor of Christopher Arnold has certainly changed, and as it should. There's Nugan on the battlefield, and he knows that's a hard one to overcome.
Well, I think now he's aware of the full scope of what Brad's doing. Yeah. I mean, I think game one, based on the way that he played it, I don't think he was anticipating Brad being able to go any bigger than Hornet Queen, and now he knows Brad can go much bigger.
Yeah, he's going to go even bigger now. There's a Garrick, Apex Predator.
He's going to go even bigger.
Yeah. Garrick's going to go after Tassiger. Destroy target creature, you gain life equal to its toughness. And that'll net Chris, looks like a Sultai Charm. But Brad doesn't really seem to mind because he's got arguably the two best Planeswalkers in the format in play.
Yeah, I would say so.
Certainly the most powerful. They're out there doing their thing.
Both powerful on their own, and also powerful your opponent happens to have a Planeswalker of their own.
Yes. And Christopher Arnold does not want to play anymore. Not going to stick around to see Ugin's ultimate. Brad Nelson going to tie things up here against Christopher Arnold. Green-Black Constellation and Sultai Midrange. Heading to a third game as Nelson will take a moment. So we'll probably be heading back our way in just a moment. But you see the power of what Brad and BBD and CVM and Todd are trying to do here. If you're not sure how good Frontier Siege is, at least in this deck, it is the glue that holds it together.
Yeah, the problems with it are there's going to be some variance. It's going to facilitate you flooding out in certain games. And you had to be able to take a turn mostly off to be able to put it into play. So that means some matchups it's going to be bad top deck, of course. And in some matchups it's going to be hard to take that turn off.
Yeah.
But you can see in this kind of mid-range matchup where neither one of those scenarios is really the case, that when Brad has Frontier Siege early on in the game, he can easily overpower his opponent.
Now, we have seen 2/4/6 ramp decks in the past. And when I say that, I mean 2. I mean Farseeker, Rampant Growth. 4, oftentimes Solemn Simulacrum or some other 4-mana ramping spell, or just another 2-mana ramping spell. And then 6 is the big payoff card. And in years past, it was Primeval Titan. And now Brad is jumping a little bit above 6, but Frontier Siege allows him to do that. So we see cards like Hornet Queen, we see Ugin, we see Garrick. Big payoff cards. Now, Primeval Titan, back in its day, was the ultimate payoff card because it got you more lands, which lets you do more stuff, be it Valakut or Inkmoth Nexus and Kessig Wolfrun. Now, you don't really have that, thankfully, I think, Primeval Titan.
Yep.
We've had just about enough of that over the course of Magic, but these Planeswalkers are very powerful. You have to work your way to get to them, but if you do, the payoff is certainly worth it, as we saw in Game 2.
Also, the standard format is just much different.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no mana leaks. Like, people do have some counters in their decks, but people just kind of have more time to play their stuff. And so even though it is a little bit slower and a little bit less powerful than Primeval Titan in the context of the formats that it existed in, the deck can still be plenty good.
Yeah.
You're not playing in nearly as hostile waters as you did a couple of years ago with those ramp strategies that you alluded to.
Yeah. Now, again, what you ramp to, that's the big question, right? The ramping is pretty much set in stone. You've got Elvish Mist, you got Caryatid. Maybe if you want to play Voyaging Satyr, you can do that. Maybe some sort of Nykthos Shell if you want to work that way. So, but for the most part, you're set in stone. You've got Frontier Siege, is what you're trying to ramp into on turn 3, if possible. And then, what do you want to ramp into? There's a lot of options. Ugin certainly seems good. Garrick seems good. Hornet Queen seems very good, especially in combination with another copy of Frontier Siege. So options are plentiful here for the players. When we watched Brian on the first round of the day, we were talking about how, if his Ugins had been Garrick, maybe he wins, but, that's just one game.
Yeah.
In that situation we just watched, if Brad's Ugin is Garrick, maybe he wins, but the Ugin is the hammerlock on that game.
So there's some awkwardness with Ugin in conjunction with Caryatid and Elvish Mystic and Frontier Siege and so on. With that said, the raw power of Ugin is just through the roof. Like, It shows up in the average game. Yeah, maybe you have to blow up some of your own stuff, but it really doesn't matter all that much.
I mean, you're paying a cost to put that card in your deck. 8 mana is a lot, so it can be a bad draw a lot of the time. And there are definitely be situations where, as you mentioned, you blow up your own stuff, and it can be kind of bad news, as we saw in round 1 with BBD, where he was unable to minus it in situations where he would have liked to. But there are also situations where no other card will win you the game.
Yep. As you mentioned, yeah, BBD was defeated casting 3 Ugins in one game just because of the weirdness of the board. He couldn't afford to minus it to kill a Siege Rhino because he would have lost too much of his own stuff, so on and so forth. But in the average game, a resolved Ugin, unless something really weird's happening or you're too close to lethal and you get burned out, that's going to be good enough to win.
Now, what I like about this ramp deck is what I liked about the old Primeval Titan ramp deck as well. Not the Valakut version, but more so the Ink Moth Nexus Kessig Wolfrun version is, yeah, you were looking to go 2-4-6 in a Primeval Titan, but did you have things to do in the meantime? And the answer was yes. Back then you had Green Sun Zenith, which acted as other Titans, or something that could find Huntmaster of the Fells, which could bridge the gap, buy you time until you finally did find a Titan to cast. In this version, you've got Eidolon of Blossoms and Doomwake Giant, a nice 1-2 punch in the mid-game if things don't go to plan.
Yeah, and Eidolon kind of plays that Huntmaster role of it gives you a thing to do, which is powerful on its own right and facilitates you getting to the late stages of the game.
And that's what I like most about this particular take, is that you do have this small Constellation engine. Now, there are times it will be a very big Constellation engine. You can string together quite a few enchantments, but when you've got Eidolon, of course you want to do an enchantment count. You've got Doomwake Giant. You have Frontier Siege. You've got Courser of Krufix as well. So you've got some ways to cantrip around a little bit.
And the Eidolon's so nice with Frontier Siege and Courser of Krufix because, the deck has the risk of kind of flooding out. There's so much mana. So that some of your cards that do contribute to flooding out, Courser of Krufix and Frontier Siege, do cantrip off the Eidolon is a really nice hedge.
Yeah. I like the ideas behind what is going on here. Of course, in week 1, you're not going to get everything exactly right. That's very, very difficult to do, and metagames do change after all, but you can see what the thought process is here, which is I want to abuse Frontier Siege as much as I can, as much mana as it provides me. Sometimes the Dragon's ability will come up, but for the most part, we're using the Khan's ability, and I think this deck does a really nice job of abusing what that card can do.
Absolutely. I mean, it can cast the Frontier Siege ahead of schedule, and then it has a bunch of individual cards which should be good enough to win the game on their own, especially when they're played ahead of schedule.
Well, game number 3 going to be underway here in just a moment. Though, if you are just joining us, we do appreciate you having us wherever you're watching. It is round number 5 of 15 here from Washington, D.C. I am Cedric Phillips, joined by Patrick Sullivan. You're watching Brad Nelson do battle against Christopher Arnold, as both of these players are 4-0. At SCG Live, hashtag SCGDC all weekend long for your tweets, as Arnold will start off with an opulent palace in this 3rd and final game between these two players.
And now I think that Christopher is aware that his real valuable card in this matchup is his Saneful Stroke. He's only got 2 in the sideboard, but I think he's going to try his best to, if he finds one, clutch onto it as long as he can.
Well, he doesn't have one right now, as the Thoughtseize from Nelson will show Reaper of the Wilds, 2 copies of Hero's Downfall, a couple of lands there, an island in Polluted Delta, and then a copy of Bioblight.
This is a hand that is very susceptible to Hornet Queen, although Bioblight gives him some insurance. Brad can simply take that. Also, Christopher could just lose the Reaper of the Wilds here, and then he has a purely reactive hand, which should give Brad the time to get to his more powerful stuff.
Brad going to select the Reaper of the Wilds, the lone creature in the hand, just leaving Chris with some reactive cards. Though Courser of Krufix being the draw step is not a bad one. Then you take a look at the mana base. No double green just yet.
Nope, we are not finding overgrown tombs or bayous with these decks.
An Elvish Mystic does come down. Arnold is going to play an island and pass the turn back. Nelson will draw a copy of Sylvan Caryatid. Nelson with a land in his hand to deploy in Forest. There's Eidolon of Blossoms. He will draw a card and pass the turn back. That might be worthy of a Bioblight.
I think so. I think Christopher was trying to hold up hope that he could save these heroes' downfalls for just some high-impact single creatures that come to play, Doomwake Giant or maybe a Planeswalker. But because Christopher has nothing going on, I think this Eidolon is worth answering.
Again, very similar to Huntmaster of the Fells in previous ramp decks, where you'd rather save removal spell for Primeval Titan, but this is annoying enough that you have to kill it.
I think so.
No, maybe not. We'll see. There's a copy of Mana Confluence. And now this is a copy of Drowned Sorrow. Okay, that'll change some things.
That makes sense why Christopher did not make a move with a removal spell.
He'll scry the top card to the bottom, as Drowned does resolve. And we're going to head back Nelson's way. So Brad will untap, he'll draw. Copy of Llanowar Waste, he'll play a Temple of Malady. Top card becomes the bottom. We'll deploy a copy of Sylvan Caryatid and simply pass the turn back over to Arnold. Arnold will draw a Sylvan Caryatid of his own. As he rearranges his mana a bit here. Figures out how he wants to move forward into the mid game. Looks like he's going to take one to deploy this Courser. And he will. So we'll see the top card of his deck, which is a Treasure Cruise. We're a little ways away from that one as he does pass the turn back. You see Brad check his graveyard and sees 3 cards down there.
That said, Christopher has the much more normal deck of the two. If he can keep Brad off of his high-impact plays, I think Christopher's got a big edge. Even though Brad is the more powerful deck, he is leaning very heavily on only a couple cards.
I think for Christopher, he just wants to get a clock out there, SCGDC, something, to make things a little bit more difficult on Brad, as Brad is just scrying here with Temple of Malady, putting the top card to the bottom. Brad will just pass the turn back. You have to imagine his hand is pretty expensive at this point, as Tasigur is the top card here of Arnold's deck. Arnold going to go reaching for mana, realize he's 1 mana short here from Treasure Cruise. He'll deploy a Caryatid. And we'll ship things back Nelson's way. Nelson will draw a copy of Eidolon of Blossoms for the turn.
Really good draw. I mean, this is another thing that warrants some sort of response from Christopher without being one of Brad's premium plays.
There is the Eidolon. That's going to resolve. Take a draw. It's a Hornet Queen. Brad will play a Swamp. Just pass that turn back over to Arnold. Arnold on tap. Tasker's the draw. Top card is a SCGDC. Courser not cooperating right now.
And Christopher could really use it.
Yeah.
His hand's very, very expensive right now. He kind of has to select between 1 spell a turn.
Four mana going to be tapped here. He'll go with Tasker, which means he's going to have to delve away a little bit of stuff. This will make the Treasure Cruise in his hand a lot worse. Going to leave Drought and Sorrow in the bin. He's got a 4/5 on the table.
Now, Brad's going to wonder if this Tasker even matters.
Yeah, it's the question, right? If he does have removal spell in his hand, I think he does have a copy of Hero's Downfall. How much do I even care about this thing? Do I care more about the Planeswalkers that you can work your way towards? Or is Tasker just annoying enough that I want to get that off the table and keep this board pretty stable? I think that's what the player's champion is deciding right now. And he will use Hero's Downfall to get that thing off the table. So Nelson will draw. Again, we know he's got a Hornet Queen in his hand. But Arnold still does have that Bile Blight.
On top of that, you know, he's shown Drown in Sorrow, which is really bad news for Brad if he has it.
Well, Hornet Queen will be deployed along with some Insect tokens, some nice ones at that. So we'll head back Arnold's way. Arnold will draw. Top card of the deck is a Swamp, so it's finally a land. He can't put that one in play fast enough. He'll go up to 18, tie things up as far as life totals are concerned. You see Temple Deceit on top of the deck. 4 mana. There is SCGDC, so we'll turn over a couple of cards here. No creatures among them. And now the top card here is an Opulent Palace. Brad going to take a look at the graveyard, see how many cards are over there. A healthy amount, but no Treasure Cruise to be cast this turn. So we'll just head back Nelson's way. And if you're Arnold, what you're hoping for now is just no big Planeswalker.
Well, Arnold does have some answers here with Hero's Downfalls. I think he's in reasonably good shape right now. The problem is that Brad's got a number of plays here. If he starts deploying enchantments, maybe you have to use the removal spell. And Eidolon, you're really not thrilled about that. You probably have to use one of your removal spells, getting rid of the tokens, using your Bile Blights that way.
What's interesting about this situation is Brad has a lot of big draws, like a Garruk, like an Ugin, stuff like that, but he also has some pretty bad draws.
Well, there's these devotion strategies, these constellation strategies, the ramp strategies that you alluded to from previous standard formats. They do get into spots where they have maybe 10 cards in their deck that do something, and the rest of it's all set up. We've now reached the stage where Brad's as set up as he's going to get, and the question is, can he find his cards that matter?
And the last thing he needs is any more mana. Now, he'd be happy to draw an enchantment, because he's got an Eidolon of Blossoms out there. But all he's got to deploy is an Elvish Mystic. So he's kind of at the mercy of the top of his deck as he passes the turn back over to Arnold. We know what Arnold's going to draw, which is an Opulent Palace. We take a look at the next card. It's a Polluted Delta. Blue to Delta seems like it might be the easy one to play, though we stopped in Arnold's draw step as Nelson may have some interest in casting a Hero's Downfall on the Courser, but he won't. He'll let Arnold get his Blue to Delta. SCGDC's on top of the deck now. And we're going to go to the attack step. Here comes SCGDC. Couple of cards here. SCGDC, Drawn and Sorrow, and Sylvan Carry added. Zombie token coming. Before blockers, it seems, as there's a Garrick on top. That'll be a Hero's Downfall, take care of the Hornet Queen. Now, Nelson, I believe, has a Hero's Downfall in his hand that he may have had interest in casting on either Courser or SCGDC. But now that Garrick's on top of the deck, might be time to pump the brakes.
Well, the problem now is that Christopher doesn't even have to cast the Garrick. He can just leave it in his hand as insurance against one of Brad's big planeswalkers. And again, test Brad to be able to find one of his relevant cards. Not easy for him to do at this stage.
Temple of Malady might help. And Brad left the top card on top of his deck very quickly.
Because Christopher has all sorts of stuff to do in the meantime. You know, and he's got a Treasure Cruise in his hand. He doesn't have to deploy this Garrick. He can just leave it in his hand as essentially another Hero's Downfall.
Here's a Hero's Downfall. Take care of the Eidolon of Blossoms. Arnold is going to draw his Garrick. Top card of his deck is a copy of Bile-Blight. So these Planeswalkers from both decks staring each other down. Here's a Treasure Cruise.
It's nice that we've gotten to the point where people can play 7 and 8 mana Planeswalkers without having to cheat them into play or spend all of their equity on mana acceleration. The game's in place now where, like, yeah, these decks can just draw and cast a Garrick at some point.
Yeah, more honest.
Yeah, I like it.
A Bile-Blight, a Reaper, a Disdainful Stroke. Those are the cards drawn with the Treasure Cruise. Disdainful Stroke got to be the most important of the bunch.
Yeah, that's Christopher's, or if not his best card in the matchup, then it's among his best cards. And Brad's already in some trouble because of the Garrick lingering in Christopher's hand, ready to answer a Planeswalker off the top of Brad's deck, and now he's got to try to beat this too. It's asking a lot.
See the cards that are turned over: Drawn and Sorrow, a land, and Sultai Charm. So no zombie there for SCGDC, but the top card in the deck is a Thoughtseize, and that's a pretty good one. So Nelson's going to put his Sylvan Caryatid in front of Courser. The rest of the damage will come through. Remember, Brad kept his card on top very quickly with the Scry's Temple of Malady, and whatever that card was, as Arnold's going to sacrifice his Blue to Delta and shuffle away that Thoughtseize, likely can be countered by Disdainful Stroke.
The only thing that he could really kept on top of his deck that isn't running directly into Disdainful Stroke is perhaps Thoughtseize. I'm not even sure Brad would have kept Thoughtseize on top of his deck.
I'd be surprised if he did at this stage of the game, especially with how quickly he kept that card on top.
Yeah, I think you are probably correct.
Though will Arnold leave the Disdainful Stroke shield up?
I think that's 100%. I would be stunned if Christopher did anything with that mana.
His top card here is a Temple of Deceit. He'll deploy Reaper of the Wilds. And we're going to go back Nelson's way now. Nelson's going to draw a card. Didn't get a great look at it, but he's tapping a bunch of mana now. It's a copy of Hornet Queen. That's going to predictably be countered. But if you're Brad, you know, okay, I have to get past this stage in the game. I don't have much of a choice. So now, what he's hoping to do, you have to imagine, is peel an Ugin.
Yep. Although even still, then he's got to beat the Garrick. That would presumably follow up.
He's going to need some help.
Oh, yeah.
But you have to imagine that's the big game plan. Now remember, Arnold's draw for the turn is a Temple of Deceit. Those piles are very close to each other. But the Disdainful Stroke is in his graveyard. Temple of Deceit is the top card of his deck. That'll be his draw step. We know that because of Courser. Nelson tapping some mana here. Looks like he's going to take a point of damage to kill SCGDC. Actually, he's going to kill Reaper of the Wilds, excuse me. Probably better do that while the shields are down for the Reaper.
Yep.
The draw, there's the Temple. Now it's a Thoughtseize on top of the deck. Temple will come into play. Courser will gain a little bit of life. Thoughtseize to the bottom, we believe, and it will. Hero's Downfall's on top. If you're on, you have to tread pretty carefully here. SCGDC trigger. Hero's Downfall, and a Swamp, so no zombie. Courser on top of the deck. Kyriatic going to block there. 5 damage going to come across. Nelson going to be on 4. Probably want to try to just a little lightly because you don't want to get terribly blown up by Ugin if it does come off the top of the deck as Nelson draws.
Yeah, no reason to do anything crazy here. You're probably winning the game unless Brad does something crazy, and Garrett gives you a lot of insurance against something crazy happening.
Here's the attack. Nelson can't block fast enough as the zombie's going to come in. There are the blocks, so Nelson's going to go down to 2. Still hopeful that he can draw Ugin to get himself out of this situation.
That was actually a play. Maybe Chris has it locked up regardless. I think there's an argument there for him using Bioblight on his own Caryatid, get Brad's Caryatid off the table and attack for lethal. Though, in case Brad drew a removal spell and then top decks Hornet Queen, yada, 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 maybe you'd rather just leave the Bioblight. But in any case, Christopher able to get it done.
Yeah, it's up for debate, but we know the result, which is Christopher Arnold is going to win this match here over Brad Nelson, 2-1. Sultai midrange will take care of Green-Black Constellation, and not a great start for the Green-Black Constellation deck. Yes, it is Brad's only loss so far in the tournament. He did have 2 buys, so now he's 2-1 with the deck. But on camera, haven't really seen the deck do a ton. We got to see it in Game 2, but Games 1 and Game 3, not so much.
Well, we saw there was a mulligan for Game 1, and BBD also mulligan in his match that we had on camera. And we just haven't seen a smooth draw yet. We have not seen Man Acceleration into Frontier Siege into big play. Yeah. The deck has sort of hiccuped along the way. And as a result, you know, once you aren't blowing someone out of the gym right away, it comes down to how many high impact plays do you have and your opponent's answers to them, and then the other way around. And Christopher had a lot of clean answers to Brad's best stuff. He has access to heroes